Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia. Today I'm here to share a bit about my study journey in London. Have you ever had a dream that seemed so distant, almost impossible to reach? For me, that dream was always London. Since I was a child, images of old streets, red buses, and a city full of history have fascinated me. I used to see the pictures in my geography book and wonder if I would ever set foot in that land. Well, now I'm here, and it all started on the day I decided it was time to turn the dream into reality. I remember exactly what it was like to board that plane. My heart was split between excitement and fear. I was about to leave everything behind, my home, my family, my friends. At the same time, there was something so promising ahead. London represented the change I had always wanted, the place where I could be more than who I was in my small town in Brazil. And so, with courage I didn't even know I had, I took my first step. My first night in London was a mix of wonder and exhaustion. I arrived at my student accommodation close to midnight after a long flight and a missed connection. The first thing I noticed was the smell of rain in the air and the city lights reflecting in the puddles on the streets. The famous London weather did not disappoint. That damp cold, the cloudy sky, something that should have been disheartening, but somehow felt magical. The next day, after a restless night, I decided to explore. I took a tourist map and started walking. I wandered through iconic places I had always seen on TV: Big Ben, Tower Bridge, the gardens of Hyde Park. Everything was bigger, more intense than I imagined. There was something in the air, a feeling of history and modernity coexisting side by side. For the first time, I felt like I had entered a story I always wanted to tell. After a few days of exploration, it was time to start classes at the university. I was nervous. University in London was a completely new universe, where every hallway made me feel small, but in a challenging way. My first day of class was, I confess, more frightening than exciting. The people around me seemed so confident, so used to speaking English, to navigating that space with such ease. I remember walking into the classroom and choosing a spot in the back, trying to go unnoticed. The professor started talking, and even though I had studied English for years, it seemed like she spoke too fast. There were so many different accents in the room: British, Indian, African, Asian. I was in the middle of a cultural symphony, and it was a bit overwhelming. But then, the girl next to me, Emily, turned to me and gave me a friendly smile. She asked where I was from, and when I said Brazil, she replied, "That's amazing. I've always wanted to go there." It was the first real conversation I had in London, and from that moment, I felt less alone. One of the biggest challenges I faced was homesickness. Video calls with my family were like an anchor, something that kept me connected to what I knew. There were moments when all I wanted was to go back home, to the warmth and comfort of my parents, the smell of my grandmother's Sunday cooking, the laughter of my friends. London, despite being grand and vibrant, could feel lonely. But in those moments, I learned to find solace in the little things. I started to enjoy having tea in the late afternoon, something I never did before. I discovered a small cafe hidden between two bookstores where the staff always greeted me with a warm smile. These small routines helped me feel more at home. It was then I realized that being far away didn't mean being alone. As the weeks went by, I began to open up more to the people around me. The university organized a meetup for international students, and for the first time, I felt I wasn't alone in my journey. I met people from so many parts of the world. There was a guy from Egypt, a girl from Japan, a student from Spain. Everyone was there, trying to adapt, learning how to deal with the unknown. I made friends who taught me things I never imagined learning. How to cook an Indian dish, how to pronounce words in Arabic, and even how to appreciate London's constant rain, which used to seem like a nuisance to me. Emily, my classmate, became a close friend, and we started exploring the city together. We spent afternoons in museums, nights watching plays, and many weekends laughing at our attempts to understand the London Underground. One of the most important moments of my journey was realizing that studying abroad was not just about learning in the classroom, but about rediscovering myself. London forced me out of my comfort zone to face my fears and insecurities. I used to be afraid of expressing myself, of making mistakes in English, of being too different. But little by little, I realized that being different was what made everything more interesting. I participated in a poetry event at the university where I read a text in Portuguese. I was scared, thinking no one would understand, that no one would care. But when I finished, there were applause. People came to talk to me, saying how much they loved the sound of the language, how emotion was present in every word, even if they didn't understand the exact meaning. It was then I realized that even in such a different place, I could be myself, and that was enough. Studying in London taught me to see the world differently. Books were an important part, of course, but the city was a living classroom. Every corner, every street had something to teach. I began visiting lesser-known neighborhoods, exploring street markets, getting lost on purpose. I wanted to see London beyond the tourist spots, wanted to understand how people lived, how the city pulsed outside peak hours. It was on one of those days in Camden Town that I found an old record shop. The owner, a kind gentleman, asked if I liked Brazilian music and put on a bossa nova vinyl record. We stayed there, talking while the music filled the air. Moments like this made me realize that although I was far from home, the world had a way of making us feel connected. It made me feel like we belong, wherever we are. Something I quickly learned is that small achievements are what keep us going. Buying a coffee and understanding the barista's accent, asking for directions on the underground without feeling nervous, even making new friends at a university party. Each of these things, though they seemed small, were huge steps in my journey. I remember the day I received my first graded paper from my professor. I was nervous, thinking I hadn't done enough. When I saw the grade and her comment, "Excellent work with a unique perspective," I felt incredibly accomplished. It was just a small piece of paper, but for me, It was confirmation that I was in the right place. It showed me that I could do it. Today, as I share this journey with you, I can say that London has become a part of me. Not just for the places I visited, the classes I took, or the people I met, but for what the city taught me about belonging. I discovered that we don't need to fully adapt to a place to belong. We belong where we put down roots, where we share our stories, and where we learn from others. London taught me to embrace who I am, to be proud of my culture, and to see the world with a more open mind. It's funny how a childhood dream can become something so transformative, far beyond what I could have imagined. My journey is far from over. I have so much to learn, so much to experience, but one thing is certain, I am living the dream, and that's more than I could have ever asked for. London is now my temporary home, but what I take from here will stay with me forever. Thank you for being here with me, for listening to my story. I hope that, in some way, this inspires you to follow your dreams, even if they seem far away. Because, as I discovered, the first step is just the beginning of a journey that is worth living.